Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. I've got two Sig Sauer military firearms sitting here on the table. I've got the P226 MK25 and I've got the newer Sig Sauer M17. There's also an M18, it's a different style. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links, it will often save you money. Never will cost you any additional money and helps the channel. And please consider supporting the channel on Player, formerly Utreon, where we can do some types of videos that are no longer allowed on YouTube. Both of these are the actual guns that were used. Now neither one of these were ever issued. This P226 was purchased new as a newly manufactured firearm. The MK25 variant was popular with the Navy SEALs, but the P226 in general was used in a number of military applications, both U.S. and other militaries. The 226, because it was intended for use in Navy-type operations, had phosphate coating on the barrel and many of the internal components for corrosion resistance. It's a hammer gun. It's a full-size, duty-size gun, of course, and it is a 9mm, and this one does have a threaded barrel available. The M17, you're going to come in, there's a bunch of different flavors of the M17. So there's the P320, and I'm not going to go through all the details. Actually, I'll put a link to the full review, and it has all that information in it. But the important thing to note, this is not the civilian P320. This is not a reproduction P320 or M17. This is an actual M17 that could have been issued to a military as an overrun. So they had an order for a batch of 500 and they made 550, and this is, one of the extra 50. So this is identical in every way to one that would be issued to a soldier in the field. As a result of that, it has some things that are different from the civilian. And again, it's a full-size gun, it's heavy, it's meant to be a duty weapon, that's what these are for. But it's striker fired, like the P320. It has the removable chassis like the P320. So it's got a lot of the modern attributes. So if I put them side by side, we'll do the size compare and get that over with, because there's really not a whole lot of difference between them. If I put them like this, and I'll put their flush mags in, you can see that by the time you put the flush mag in, the P226 is actually just a hair shorter, but so much little difference that it's just not going to matter. So from a height perspective, they are 5.5 and 5.5. So the difference is in the hundredths. From a length perspective, the M17 is 8 inches, the P226 is 7.7. So you can see it's just a little bit shorter. And from a thickness perspective, the M17 is 1.4 and the P226 is 1.5, and that's really the controls. The controls are a little bit bigger on the P226. They stick out a little bit more. From a control perspective, they're similar. Takedown, slide stop, slide release, thumb safety. This thumb safety is something you won't see on the majority of the civilian P320s. It's something the military wanted, and it's on the M17. The 226 is a little more interesting in the controls. Of course, you got the takedown, slide stop, slide release, but you got this. It's a decocker. And if you pull down on it, it safely decocks the gun and leaves it in kind of a quarter cock position. So they're both drop safe. They've got internal safeties. This, of course, has your typical striker fire safeties, but it is missing the inertial toggle on the trigger. SIG doesn't do that like Glocks and Springfields and others do. This has a different safety mechanisms are designed into it, and you'll notice this one does not have a thumb safety. It's the decocker version. So I can have it fully cocked, and you notice it's a double action, single action, because it is a hammer gun. Trigger kind of goes back a little bit, or I can decock it, trigger goes forward, and now it's in double action mode. The M17 is striker, so there's one operating mode of the trigger. It's either cocked internally and ready to fire, or it's not. So if I pull the trigger, it fires, and now the trigger is dead. Until it cycles, the trigger won't work. On this one, let's say it's in a cocked position, a little bit of take up to get to the wall, I pull the trigger, it fires. Of course, it didn't cycle because it's unloaded. Now I can pull the trigger again. It's a longer double action pull. There's different variants of the 226 out there with different control setups, but this was a very popular military setup of the time. And functionally, they work different, but they're both equally pleasant to use. Now the sights are a little different. The 226, which is sitting here, has Sig Light night sights. And I like these because they're night sights and they work well at night, but they also work well during the day. The white rings around them make it where you can see them easily during the day, and at night you have very functional, very bright, easy to use night sights. So the P226 has very nice sights. I like the sights on it. The M17, I don't like the sights quite as much. It has a front sight that is tritium with the ring, so the front sight's easy to see. But if you'll notice, there's two little glass dots here in the rear sight, but they're basically black. And under typical range lighting conditions, they just disappear. You can't really see them. At night, the front sight lights up green and is actually pretty easy to see. The rear sight is two very tiny white dots. But that's less of a potential issue because of that plate. These are designed to be optics ready, just like the civilian ones. The only difference is there's one specific optic that's designed to fit on this, and the internal mounting points are set up for that optic. So most of the commercial optics that are out there will not fit on it. So if you do get the actual M17, the real military version, you are going to have some limitations in what optics are available to you. Other than that, that kind of mitigates the sights. From a weight perspective, they're close. The M17 is a little bit lighter at 29.4. There's a lot of polymer in this. And the P226 is 34 ounces. There's a lot of aluminum in this. But being 9mm, both of them control recoil well and are very comfortable to shoot. Capacity is one of the things that is different. So the flush mag that's in the M17 is 17 rounds. It also comes with these 21 round magazines, and there is a 30 round magazine available. The M17 does not come with a 10 round option, but it will use the 10 round magazines from the civilian ones if you have a state limited, but they don't ship with it. The 226 tends to come with these 15 round magazines. There is a 10 round version available of it at the time it was being manufactured. They also have an 18 and a 20 round. I'm not aware of anything larger than 20, but doesn't mean there isn't one. So they both have rails, so you can add accessories to them. The 226 is not optics ready. This was before the era of everything becoming optics ready. One of the things I will demonstrate, the triggers are different. The triggers on both of these are nice, but they're different. So I'm going to start with the hammer down on the 226. A little bit of take up. Kind of a long but very smooth and moderately heavy brake, or pull to the brake. And then I'm going to cycle it as if it had fired. There's the reset. Very, very short reset with a little bit of bounce off the reset. And then a very light, very short, very crisp brake. Now I'm going to also show what it would be if I had it manually cocked it and had let off the trigger fully. There's a little bit of take up to get back on there, but it's super light and it's super smooth. And then again, a very nice brake. This has a very nice trigger. Typical DA-SA trigger, which is quite nice in SA mode. And unlike a lot of DAs, the DA mode is actually pretty smooth and pretty light. Some of them tend to be fairly heavy. That one's not. Now this one has to be cycled and internally cocked to function. There's the take up, not much. Kind of a heavyish, short, and slightly vague brake, but overall a decent trigger. The reset's basically all the way out off of the normal initial pull, and again that's a decent brake. It's kind of vague and it's a little heavier than I would expect, but it's a reasonably good trigger. I found that both of these, the trigger did its job well, and that part of it would made them easy to shoot well. I would definitely give the nod to the P226's trigger. Really a much nicer trigger than the M17, but the M17 is not bad as triggers go. From a shooting experience perspective, both of these are mechanically accurate, and the gun itself will do its job well. I found the P226, with the trigger being a little nicer, is a little easier to shoot well. The sights are a little bit better as well, and this is a little more fun to shoot. This has it's got some history to it, And it's also mechanical. You feel it's kind of like a 1911. It has that mechanical feel. You feel things operating. So it's more of an experience to shoot this. This is relatively easy to shoot well, but it's more clinical. It's a tool doing its job. So it doesn't have quite the cachet that the P226 does. If you're looking for something that is lighter and modern, the M17 will get you that, especially if you put the optic on it that'll fit on it. Now you've got an optics ready gun that's actually quite a reliable gun and easy to go with. But if you want something that's kind of fun, nice, a good range day, the P226 between these two would be hard to beat, both of them being military history, but this one just having a little bit more class, for lack of a better way to describe it. Beyond that, if you look in the description, you can get the link to the full reviews on both of these, and you can learn more about the differences between the variants of the M17, the real M17 like you see here, and some of the civilian versions of it. You can get a little more information on this. But beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Player, Rumble. We're pretty much everywhere. And thank you.